My name is Paul Woodford and I drive a 1972 Clan Crusader.
So how did you get involved with clans?
I've always been fascinated by clans. I like a classic car with a good story, and they don't come much better than the Clan Crusader, with the Clan Motor Company only being in operation for a couple of years, and the crises of various kinds in the 1970s, but also how in the race and rally world it took on the giants of motorsport and inspired quite a few people at the time. And my plan is to tell the story of the car and make sure it continues to inspire people.
You're quite heavily involved in the club, I understand.
Yes. Well, I'm not heavily involved with the club. That's almost accidental. I just put a lot of content out, and of course, with a car like the Clan, with so few parts available, so few people with knowledge, it's very important to have a good relationship with the Owners Club. And the Owners Club and the whole community around the Clan and the imp world is quite unique. So it's difficult not to get embroiled in the community, as it were.
So, for the uninitiated, introduce us to the Clan. And basically it's a GRP monocoque created by ex-Lotus engineers.
It is. It's a small volume production car from the 1970s. It's a bit of a myth that it was a kit car. Like a lot of the small volume cars back in those days, you could get it in assemble at home format, which I think it was basically three main parts: the body shell all wired up and ready to go, the engine and the drivetrain. Although don't quote me on that, because I obviously bought mine 50 years later. But it was at the time I believe the world's first ever production one-piece monocoque. It was designed and built by a team of ex-Lotus engineers who, when they were working at Lotus, didn't like the lack of creativity that Colin Chapman afforded them. So some top people under the control of Paul Woodford, who was the MD of Clan Motor Company, came over and started their own small sports car manufacturer. And it was a bit of a fairy tale while it lasted. It uses Hillman Imp running gear because it was lightweight. Of course, it was aluminium, the engine, so that meant that they could keep the weight down. It's also the way the imp engine sits at an angle means they could keep the centre of gravity low on the car. They tried other drivetrains, or looked at other drivetrains, including the Mini A series, but it was too heavy, it was too bulky, sat upright, so it meant that the car was too high in the air if they were to fit that engine. And of course, if you've seen the McCoy kit car that sort of followed the Clan in terms of design, it looks awkward and horrendous because it's got the Mini running gear. So it was a unique car, although there were a fair few people trying to make similar type cars back in the 70s, and that's what makes it fascinating. It was set amidst this backdrop of the world changing and the oil crisis and everything else, and they had these people desperately, with passion alone in some cases, knocking out small volume sports cars.
And if you think about it in the context of the day, you had the Triumph Spitfire, the MG Midget. It must have looked like a spaceship.
I think it probably looked like a spaceship back in the 1970s, yeah. There wasn't much else that looked like it. In fact, people think of the wedges coming in the 80s, don't they? But the wedges very much came in the 1970s, and they came in nice 70s shades as well. I actually wanted a brown Clan, so I'm pleased with brown, although some people say, would you like it red? It's been every colour under the sun in its history, I have to say, that car. But it started brown, and it will end its days brown in whatever way.
How did you find your Clan?
Yeah, I was circuit manager at a racetrack called Cadwell Park at the time. We'd just come out of the first coronavirus lockdown. It was one of those years that just felt like doing something mad, Pete Richards was racing his Clan at Cadwell one weekend, actually blew its engine up all over the mountain, which was fun. But I had a chat with him, and I always used to talk to him when he came because I was fascinated by the car. And he always used to say, you need to get yourself one. They're quite cheap. And they're not as cheap as he suggested. But I put a wanted ad out, and this one came up. And it came with a very apologetic owner who said, look, it's all right, but it's very brown. But of course I wanted a brown Clan, so there's no apology necessary.
So you said it's been various colours in the past. What do you know about the history?
I've got a full history file, actually, right back from when the car. I've got the original invoices from the factory when the car was produced, and it was, as I say, brown originally. It had a tow bar fitted from the factory, bizarrely. I've no idea where, how, why, and there's certainly no sign of it. So whether it was just bought and never fitted, I don't know, but certainly it was on the original spec list. It was yellow at one point. I've got some photos of it yellow. It was red at another point. I guess it's just one of those cars that over the years, because they don't rust away, they tend to live a few different life cycles over 50 years compared to, say, I don't know, an Anglia or an Escort. It might get fully restored every now and again, but it's not the sort of car that lives in cycles. Anyone who has got a GRP car from the 60s, 70s, 80s will know what I mean. The history is full of weird and wonderful quirks and stories that you just don't get with usual cars. So there were a few attempts to revive the Clan name over the years. The first one was when what was left of the shells and bits and pieces that had been built in the factory and the moulds went over to Cyprus. A businessman across there, who I believe was making truck bodies, had them in showrooms in Cyprus. It then came all the way back to Ireland, and then we got the Irish Clan, slightly modernised, I think is a loose term for what happened at that point, and it got square bumpers. It looked quite cool, actually. It suited alley cats at that point. And then you got the Clan Clover that came later, which roughly worked on the same platform, but you ended up with an Alpha Sud engine, and that was a mid-engine Clan. So quite a few different concoctions. And then you had the Luff Clans, which was Brian Luff, who used to work for Clan, basically built competition vehicles and stronger body shells out of the shells that were left. So you had some cars that came out of that fold. And then I'm loath to talk about it in the same sentence as a Clan Crusader, but the McCoy kit car was a car that some people do credit as being from the Clan fraternity, because it was somebody who was connected with the Clan who actually started the McCoy. As I said earlier, it uses mini running gear, and that makes it ungainly because it's so high at the back, and it just looks awful. The proportions are all wrong, and the Clan Crusader was designed to have Hillman Imp running gear, and it was designed to look squat and streamlined, and it was not designed to have a mini stuck in the back.
And of course, in their day, an incredible competition history.
Yeah, the Clan Crusader took on the world of race and rally. So not only did it come, when nobody had even heard of it, come second at the Manx Rally behind Roger Clark's Escort in the hands of Andy Dawson, who was a works driver back then. Was actually ran the Roots competition department, or the Chrysler competition department as it was then, which is how he came to know about the works program, which was a bit of an accident in itself. Alan Conley, who subsequently a couple of weeks later won the Tour of Mull Rally, was actually the first one to get a works car. The Dawson Clan was the crash mule that was left on the factory floor, and he'd heard about Conley's Clan, went down to see Paul Woodford and said, I want one as well. And he said, well, we haven't got the resources to make another works car, particularly not with a week to go before the Manx Rally. Well, what about that one? Well, we can stick some arches on it. But it wasn't the lightweight competition clans that became known as the works clans. It was very much a concoction, but they got it to the Isle of Man. They had to do a test for the roll cage, where they turned a body shell upside down, and I think they put something like 15 tons of iron ingots off the production line into a skip that was placed on top of the body shell. And you just look at that and you think perhaps that was the FIA trying their best not to give the car a certificate. They probably weren't expecting it to pass. So this thing rolled down scrutineering on the Isle of Man, and Paul Woodford told me about that moment. He said the looks they were getting from people, works rally drivers, Roger Clark, one of the most legendary rally drivers of all time, sat there with his works Escort, and this, people calling it a plastic pig, came rolling past, and as I say, was pushing Roger all the way to second place, which was a surprise. And then for Conley to win the formidable Tour of Mull 2 weeks later was just an epic story. That was in 1972, and then in 1973, Johnny Blades, who was a flamboyant tailor from Whitney Bay, who also drove Formula 2 cars and previously had driven GT cars, well-known racer, successful club racer, got the deal to run a Motorsports works Clan Crusader. The Blades story is something I've made a documentary about, because it's just such an inspiring story. It really is a small production car taking on the world. They went up against Lotus on the racetrack, and the guys behind Clan must have been delighted to finally have that story told in front of thousands of people in grandstands all over the UK. And Blades did win the Northern Motorsports Championship that year. It was his final year of racing. It was a real blaze of glory, and it was an inspiring story, and it would also be one of the last Clan stories, because of course after that with the problems with the supply chain, the Roots Group and the world oil crisis and various other political issues going on at the time in the 1970s, that just wasn't a conducive backdrop for a small volume sports car manufacturer, less so for one that was spending a lot of money on race and rally programs. So Clan was no more, but the story had been told and would cement its place in history, of course.
And the Irish Clan carried on with competition. They did rally a few up there as well.
Yeah, the Irish Clan rally story is one that I've not really delved into. For me, the real Clan story was when it was the Clan Motor Company. Anything after that, it doesn't really get seen as a full works program. But yeah, they did do some more rallying. And you know, Clans have gone on to success in various forms all over motorsport since then. There was a successful, in fact, it was actually a British trials champion as well. Mike Hind took the Clan Crusader, and that in theory was a works car as well. So there was a whole host of motorsport stories connected to the car, and for me that's what made it so fascinating. It was a car that had all of the provenance and the heritage of the Escorts and the Chevettes and all the other sort of famous rally cars of the time. It's really very much a British Stratos that had its own rally story and race story that no one's really told. So that was my plan for the car.
Now, a chance to do a bit of plugging, because I know you've recently brought out a DVD, and we're not the BBC, so you're allowed to mention it.
Yeah, the story of the Clan Crusader, for me, right at the heart is the motorsport story. So I've made a couple of documentaries, one about the rally stories, one about the racing stories of the Blades era in 1973. It is available for free on YouTube. It's also available on a DVD because, bizarrely, you can put things for free on YouTube these days and people still want something in their hands. So quite a few people had contacted me asking if I would do a DVD. So I'm just about to get those first batch of those sent out to people. So if you do want a DVD with the Clan Crusader race and rally stories on, then drop me a line. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you look for Clan Crusader, there's an account all about that car and various other cars that I've told stories about along the way.